Welcome back to Odd Occasions. Today we're diving into a world of thefts you might not expect. Wild plant poaching. From rare Venus flytraps to ancient bonsai trees, these cases of botanical crime are truly shocking, and they impact entire ecosystems. So join us as we explore 10 of the most bizarre and daring plant heists from across the globe. Let's get started. Number 10. Venus Flytraps of the Carolinas. Upon its discovery, the Venus flytrap was hailed as one of the most remarkable finds in the entire plant kingdom. Back in 1760, North Carolina's colonial governor Arthur Dobbs kept a detailed plant diary, describing the flytrap's unique feeding method. For those unfamiliar, any insect unlucky enough to trigger the hairs on the inner side of the flytrap's leaves causes those leaves to snap shut, trapping its prey. That quick snapping motion, along with its teeth-like trigger hairs, has made the Venus flytrap something of a cultural symbol. You've probably seen plants inspired by it in films and video games, from The Addams Family and Little Shop of Horrors to Super Mario Bros. Today, North Carolina is proud to call the Venus flytrap its official carnivorous state plant. The state has poured resources into preserving the species through conservation efforts. But even for a carnivorous plant, celebrity can come with a price. Once flourishing across both North and South Carolina, wild Venus flytraps are now restricted to a mere 145-kilometer or 90-mile radius around Wilmington, North Carolina. This is the only place in the world where they thrive in their natural habitat. Conservationists are worried, and not just because of habitat loss, but because of poachers. In 2014, the state made the theft of wild Venus flytraps a felony offense, with violators facing up to 25 months in prison. Fast forward to 2016, when Paul Simmons Jr., along with 3 other suspects, was the first to be charged with this felony. Their crime? Poaching 970 Venus flytraps from Holly Shelter Gameland in Pender County. While the vastness of the territory makes it hard to eliminate poaching completely, the new law has already proven to be a solid deterrent. After Simmons's arrest, officials surveyed several plots of land, looking for the telltale holes left behind by plant thieves. Out of 18 plots, only 6 showed signs of poaching after the 2016 arrest. Before that, it was 15 out of 18. Quite the improvement, don't you think? Number 9. The world's smallest water. Lily from Rwanda. Meet Nymphea thermarum, the tiniest water lily in the world, a plant that nearly disappeared from the face of the earth once before. Its natural habitat, a small area near a hot spring in Mashyuza, Rwanda, was drained by local agriculture. This left the lily teetering on the edge of extinction. Fortunately, in 1985, German botanist Eberhard Fischer from Koblenz-Landau University took samples of this rare plant, hoping to preserve it. But there was a problem. Those samples wouldn't reproduce properly. Fast forward to 2009. Fisher sent a few seeds and seedlings to the Royal Botanical Gardens, Kew, in London. That's when horticulturist Carlos Magdalena made a breakthrough discovery. Unlike other water lilies, Nymphea thermarum starts its life not in water, but in warm mud. This revelation allowed Kew Gardens to cultivate around 30 of these tiny lilies, with hopes to eventually reintroduce them to Rwanda, their original home. Despite these efforts to save the species from extinction, the world's smallest water lily wasn't immune to poaching. In 2014, between 8:30 a.m. and 2:55 p.m., a burglar snuck into the Princess of Wales Conservatory at Kew Gardens, cut off a bud, and disappeared without a trace. Detective Constable Sam Johnson, leading the investigation from the Richmond Branch CID, described the chances of catching the thief as extremely slim, and there's a reason for that. The leaves of the lily are only about 1 centimeter in diameter, and the bloom itself is rarely bigger than a fingernail. It's so tiny, it could easily be hidden during the heist. Plus, because it grows in mud instead of water, it's tough to spot among other potted plants. Only a trained botanist might recognize it growing in damp soil. At the time, Johnson made a public statement, saying the best chance of finding the stolen lily would be if the thief bragged about their rare discovery on social media. To this day, though, no one has. We'll keep moving through the world of plant poaching, but first, let's take a moment to appreciate the lengths conservationists go to preserve even the smallest of species. Number 8. Orchids of the United Kingdom. The United Kingdom has a long and complicated history with plant poaching, particularly when it comes to its native orchids. This issue dates back to the Victorian era, when an obsession with orchids and ferns swept across the nation, leaving the natural landscape severely depleted. Some species, like the Killarney and Woodsia ferns, never recovered. And then there's the summer lady's tresses orchid, an incredibly rare orchid that Britain lost for good. The last of its kind vanished from its habitat in the New Forest in Hampshire in 1956. Sadly, this orchid has disappeared not only from the UK, but also from Holland and Belgium. Today, it can only be found in select parts of Central Europe and the Mediterranean. What makes orchids particularly vulnerable is their highly specialized growth conditions. These delicate plants have developed unique adaptations that allow them to thrive only in very specific environments. They grow slowly and depend on a symbiotic relationship with local fungi to propagate. And while they might take their time to develop, once mature, orchids can live for decades. The Victorian orchid craze nearly wiped out the lady's slipper orchid, a species believed to have gone extinct in Britain. But in 1930, a lone specimen was discovered flourishing in Yorkshire. Miraculously, this orchid still exists today. Each time it blooms, it attracts crowds of plant enthusiasts eager to witness this rare beauty. Unfortunately, the orchid's scarcity has also drawn the attention of thieves and collectors who value it for its rarity. But here's the problem. Ladies' slipper orchids are notoriously difficult to transplant. Removing them from their natural environment could very well kill them. In 2004, a determined collector attempted to steal the entire plant. Another was more successful in 2009, managing to take a significant clipping. At that point, authorities stepped in, placing the orchid under 24-hour guard with closed-circuit TV surveillance. Despite these efforts, the threat of theft was so great that they eventually moved the plant to an undisclosed location to prevent further poaching attempts. The lesson here? When it comes to rare plants, the greatest threat isn't always nature itself. It's often the people who covet them the most. Number 7. Orchids of Asia. While the Victorians' obsession with orchids wreaked havoc on their own native species, Asia's demand for these plants has come at an even higher cost. Take slipper orchids, for example. There are 84 different species of this orchid, and due to relentless poaching, they've become subject to tight international regulation. According to the International Union for the Conservation of Nature, 99% of slipper orchids are now at risk of extinction. That includes every orchid in the Paphiopedilum genus, which is under even stricter protection. Despite these laws, the underground market continues to thrive. A particularly shocking example occurred in 1997, when researchers in Vietnam discovered a new species, Paphiopedilum vietnamense. Almost immediately after its discovery, the orchid appeared on the black market in the United States before Vietnam could issue any legal trade permits. And, just like that, the orchid went extinct in its natural habitat. Unfortunately, this obsessive trade and illegal acquisition of rare orchids didn't stop there. In 2004, at Heathrow Airport, a high-profile smuggler was caught. The chief of research and development at Medfarm, a pharmaceutical company. He was found carrying over 100 orchids, none of which were authorized for sale. Even more alarming, His collection included 2 orchid species so rare that they were believed to be extinct in their original habitats. In response to this escalating problem, several Asian nations have begun launching new initiatives to protect their native orchids and crack down on illegal trade. One example is in Seoul, South Korea, where citizens can earn up to $8,000 a year just by reporting tips on poaching activity. Meanwhile, those caught trafficking protected species now face penalties as high as 3 years in prison or fines of up to $26,000. Whether these efforts will be enough to curb the booming orchid trade, which is estimated to be worth millions of dollars, remains to be seen. But the race to protect these delicate and highly coveted plants is more urgent than ever. The underground orchid market shows how far some people will go to possess nature's rarest beauty, even at the cost of driving it to extinction. Number 6. Cypress Bromeliads from Florida. Air plants, like certain bromeliads, are fascinating because they don't need soil to survive. Instead, they gather all their nutrients from light, air, and rainwater. Unlike parasites, such as wisteria, that drain the plants they attach to, these epiphytes simply use their roots to cling harmlessly to trees, rocks, or other surfaces. Florida is home to most of the native bromeliads found in the United States. The Loxahatchee National Wildlife Refuge, in particular, harbors 3 of the 16 native species: the common ball moss, the endangered cardinal wild pine, and the threatened reflexed wild pine. Finding wild bromeliads in Florida used to be easy, but poaching has driven some species to the brink of extinction. The Loxahatchee Refuge is doing everything it can to protect them, but the challenges are immense. With a park spanning 143,874 acres, there are only 2 rangers on staff to patrol and guard the entire area, far too few to effectively fight off poachers. Still, the law has managed to catch a few in the act. William Calvert, a U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service ranger, has seen people leaving the refuge with armfuls of endangered air plants, boxed up and ready for sale. For most thieves, the motive is simple: money. On the black market, rare bromeliads, once abundant among the cypress trees in Florida's wetlands, can fetch anywhere from $15 to $20 each. And while those numbers might not seem huge, they add up quickly, especially when plants are stolen in bulk. The penalties for poaching can be severe. Petty plant theft carries a maximum punishment of 1 year in federal prison and a fine of up to $100,000. However, most bromeliad theft fines fall between $275 and $450. If a poacher is caught stealing over $350 worth of plants, or if they intended to sell or transport the stolen goods, the crime becomes a felony, punishable by up to 5 years in prison and a staggering $250,000 fine. The Cypress bromeliads of Florida remind us that plant poaching is not just about greed, it's about the lasting damage inflicted on ecosystems when unique species are wiped out, one theft at a time. Number 5. Cycads of the world. At the Durban Botanic Gardens, nestled along the coast of South Africa, visitors are introduced to one of the loneliest plants on Earth, Wood's cycad. It's a solitary plant, the only known male specimen of its kind. The odds of it reproducing on its own? Essentially 0. This story of isolation isn't unique among the world's many cycad species. Cycads are the world's oldest seed plants, dating back to a time before humans existed, before even the dinosaurs. They've survived for 340 million years, but today, many species are endangered or even extinct in the wild. Part of what makes cycads vulnerable to poaching is their incredibly slow growth rate, which is only matched by their immense value on the black market. A prime example, in 2014, thieves stole 10 cycads from Kirstenbosch Gardens in South Africa, plants valued at a staggering $35,000. In response, authorities started cracking down on collectors. In 2016, they launched a clever operation, using rare plants as bait to lure poachers. This effort led to the capture of several individuals, including John Adrian Van Vuren from Pretoria East. When caught, Van Vuren was in possession of multiple endangered cycads, and he now faces either a hefty fine or up to 3 years in prison. But South Africa isn't the only place where rare cycads are hunted down. Poachers strike wherever these ancient plants grow. In Sydney, Australia, thieves executed a sophisticated staged theft at the Royal Botanic Garden. On their first visit, they loosened the soil around a rare cycad to prepare it for removal. When they returned, they carefully arranged the cycad's leaves over the exposed area to conceal the missing plant from security. This meticulous strategy was successful, and not a single person was apprehended. Perhaps even more audacious was the heist that took place during Hurricane Francis in 2004. A group of skilled poachers broke into the Fairchild Tropical Botanic Garden in South Florida and made off with 31 of the rarest cycads, despite the ongoing storm. Among their loot, a clone of the woods cycad, no less, a stroke of unbelievable fortune. The cycad's long history is a testament to their resilience, but as modern poaching intensifies, even these ancient survivors face threats that no natural disaster has posed before. What was once protected by time and nature now falls prey to human greed. Number 4. The saguaro cacti of Arizona. The saguaro cactus is an iconic symbol of the American Southwest, instantly recognizable for its towering form and distinctive arms. Its popularity extends beyond the desert, as gardeners and plant enthusiasts around the globe have developed a fascination with these majestic succulents. But this growing demand has fueled a surge in poaching, particularly for the tall saguaros, which can fetch as much as $100 per foot on the black market. Some saguaros reach staggering heights of over 18 meters, 60 feet, making them prime targets for thieves. Given that these cacti can take up to 10 years just to grow a single arm, their slow development only adds to their value. The cactus forest in Saguaro National Park has been hit hard by poachers. In some areas, the evidence of theft is all too clear. Gaping holes where towering cacti once stood. Ray O'Neill, the park's chief ranger, has spent countless hours trekking through the forest, tracking the telltale signs of missing cacti. But catching poachers in the act? Nearly impossible. The thefts happen quickly, often before law enforcement can respond. And determining the full scale of the problem is no small task. In 2014 alone, the U.S. Border Patrol confiscated over 2,600 stolen cacti. In an effort to combat this issue, O'Neill and his team came up with an ingenious solution. In 2018, they began embedding microchips into their saguaros. While the chips can't prevent the cacti from being stolen, they allow park officials to identify stolen plants when they turn up at nurseries, flea markets, roadside stands, or other points of sale on the black market. The strategy seems to be working. Since news of the microchip program spread, saguaro theft has plummeted. The idea that stolen cacti could be traced back to the park appears to have spooked potential thieves. In fact, since the initiative was launched, no instances of saguaro theft have been reported. The saguaro cactus, a living symbol of the American desert, is now safer thanks to a blend of old-fashioned ranger patrols and modern technology. But the fight to protect these slow-growing giants continues, as their value on the black market shows no signs of dwindling. Number 3. Bonsai of Japan. In the quiet town of Saitama Prefecture, Japan, Seiji Imura, a fifth-generation bonsai master, tends to a remarkable outdoor garden housing 3,000 meticulously crafted bonsai trees. But in January 2019, Imura discovered that several of his most treasured and valuable trees had been stolen. Among them, A Shimpaku juniper, a bonsai with a history as rich as its beauty. This particular Shimpaku was originally collected from a cliff during Japan's Edo period, and some believe it may even be depicted in a well-known piece of Japanese artwork. But its value isn't just historical. The process of crafting a Shimpaku bonsai involves gathering the tree from perilous heights, often traversing the dangerous Ishizuchi mountain range, and then slowly shaping and reducing the tree over many years to fit into its container. The result is a centuries-old masterpiece of patience and skill. Iemura estimates that this particular bonsai, which has been carefully cultivated over hundreds of years, is worth between $54,000 and $90,000. And it's not just about money. For Seiji and his wife, Fuyumi, who together manage a 5,000-hectare park of bonsai open to the public, the loss was deeply personal. To them, the theft was akin to losing a family member. Fuyumi explained to reporters that bonsai trees hold a special place in their hearts. A bonsai is often an heirloom, representing the labor of multiple generations. It's a connection between the past, present, and future of a family. Although the Imuras plan to keep their garden open to the public, they have since installed surveillance cameras and are planning to build a fence to prevent further theft. Given the slim chances of retrieving their stolen bonsai, Seiji's only plea to the thieves was a humble one: to properly water the trees. Shimpaku junipers can live for up to 400 years, but without proper care, they are incredibly vulnerable. A week without water could kill the trees, making this simple act of watering a lifeline for these ancient creations. For the Imuras, bonsai isn't just an art form or a business, it's a living legacy. The theft of their cherished trees is a reminder of the deep connections people can form with plants, and how devastating it can be to lose something so entwined with history, heritage, and care. Number 2. Ginseng from Appalachia. Long before European colonization, Native Americans were already using the root of the American ginseng plant for its medicinal properties. In the 18th century, a French missionary recognized the plant's similarity to Asian ginseng and sent samples to China for evaluation. The Chinese quickly saw its value. American ginseng had cooling and stabilizing qualities, a perfect counterpart to the warming nature of their native ginseng. This discovery sparked a demand for American ginseng in China that's lasted for over 2 centuries, fueling an ongoing tradition of wild harvesting in the Appalachian region. For many families in Appalachia, harvesting ginseng has become a way of life, passed down from generation to generation. But as demand grew, so did over-harvesting, putting immense pressure on the wild population of American ginseng. The plant became scarce, and efforts to regulate its collection were slow to take hold. States like Kentucky and Indiana have since introduced tracking systems to help manage the harvest. Only licensed merchants are allowed to sell American ginseng, and they must record the amount gathered, as well as the county where it was harvested. This system provides some oversight, but poaching and illegal harvesting remain widespread. The financial incentives are hard to ignore. A pound of freshly picked ginseng can sell for $75 to $100, while dried ginseng fetches as much as $350 per pound. And as the season comes to a close in late December, the price can skyrocket to $1,000 per pound. This profitability makes American ginseng an irresistible target for both legal and illegal harvesters. However, there's some hope for this plant. Unlike other species on this list, American ginseng doesn't need a complete ban on harvesting for preservation. Conservationists have found that if people wait for the plant's seeds to mature and replant them in the original location, the species can continue to thrive. Ginseng is surprisingly easy to propagate, if given the chance. The problem? Many harvesters, motivated by money, don't bother to follow these simple guidelines. They dig up the roots without replanting seeds, leaving the population at risk. Despite these challenges, American ginseng has been lucky compared to some other wild plants. With proper management and care, it has the potential to survive in the wild, ensuring that both the plant and the centuries-old tradition of ginseng harvesting continue to thrive in Appalachia. But as always, the key lies in finding a balance between profit and preservation. Number 1. Wildflowers everywhere. Many of us learned an important lesson early on. When we're out in nature, whether on a walk, a field trip, or a road trip, we shouldn't pick the wildflowers. It's a simple rule, but an important one. Despite their abundance, wildflowers are often protected by law, and for good reason. Many plants that once thrived in their natural habitats have been impacted by overharvesting and habitat loss. So while wildflowers may seem common, their removal can harm entire ecosystems. Wildflowers like orchids, snowdrops, and lilacs are especially vulnerable, though the specifics of these protections can vary from place to place. But why is it such a big deal to pick a few wildflowers? For one, these delicate blooms wither quickly, often losing their beauty before they can be appreciated. And for those who think pulling up the whole plant for transplanting is a better option, most wildflowers don't survive the process, and removing them completely from their environment is even more damaging. Poachers, however, have turned to an even more effective yet destructive method: seed theft. The National Park Service in the U.S. uncovered this practice when they confiscated a significant quantity of seeds stolen from Zion National Park in Utah. This intentional theft disrupts the critical reproductive cycle of wildflowers, which rely on their seeds to regenerate each year. When a few too many flowers are picked or seeds are collected in excess, that cycle is broken. The true cost of this poaching often reveals itself over time. The loss of wildflowers impacts not only plant lovers, but also the entire ecosystem. Birds, bats, bees, and other animals that depend on the pollen and nectar of native flowers suffer, creating a ripple effect up the food chain. Fewer flowers mean fewer pollinators, and that makes it even harder to restore plant life in the future. Sadly, this issue persists, as some people can't resist the temptation to take a bit of nature home with them without considering the broader impact. Thanks for watching. Who knew plants could be at the heart of such dramatic stories? If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more fascinating tales from odd occasions. Have any strange or wild topics you'd like us to cover? Let us know in the comments, and we'll see you next time.